Sweden offered Canada fighter jets. The United States offered the F-35. One country wins, one loses. End of story. That interpretation is wrong. And if you believe it, you miss what's actually happening. This was never about Sweden trying to steal a contract from the United States. It was never about price tags, performance charts, or which jet looks better on paper. Those are distractions. What Sweden really did was fire a warning shot, quiet, calculated, and aimed at something far bigger than a weapons deal. A silent power struggle is unfolding in places most people never think about. The Arctic skies, the North Atlantic, and the digital systems that quietly decide who controls air defense in North America. This wasn't a sales pitch. It was a message about control, about dependence, about who really owns the systems that protect Western airspace. And once you understand that, the real question becomes unsettling. If this wasn't about money, what was Sweden actually trying to change? For years, everyone assumed the outcome was already decided. Canada was expected to buy the F-35. Not because there was a real contest, but because that's how the Western defense system works. The F-35 isn't just a fighter jet, it's a club. Once you're inside, you stay inside. Then Sweden did something that wasn't supposed to happen. They didn't offer a small batch of jets. They didn't offer a basic export package. They didn't play it safe. Sweden offered 88 next-generation Gripen E fighters, along with full technology transfer, domestic production in Canada, complete software access, and total operational control. That combination is almost unheard of. Most countries that buy advanced fighters are allowed to operate them, but not truly own them. The software, mission data, encrypted communications, and system updates usually stay under the control of the manufacturer and its government. The United States never allows full control of the F-35, not to allies, not even to its closest partners. Sweden was offering Canada something radically different, not just aircraft, but sovereignty. That's why the reaction wasn't excitement. It was panic. Because this wasn't generosity. It was a direct challenge to how Western air power has been organized for decades. And it raised a dangerous question inside defense circles. Why would Sweden risk angering Washington by offering a deal that breaks every rule? The answer lies far north, where the next battlefield is quietly taking shape. For most of modern history, the Arctic didn't matter much. It was frozen, remote, and mostly ignored. That era is over. Rising temperatures are melting ice that once blocked access year-round. New shipping routes are opening between Europe, Asia, and North America. Energy reserves that were unreachable are now within range. What used to be a natural wall is becoming a highway. Russia understands this. It has rebuilt and expanded military bases across its northern coastline, adding airfields, radar stations, and missile systems. These aren't symbolic moves. They are permanent. China understands it too. Even though it's nowhere near the Arctic, it now calls itself a near-Arctic state and is pushing for influence over trade routes, research stations, and infrastructure. And right in the middle of all this sits Canada. Canada controls one of the largest Arctic territories on Earth, yet much of its northern airspace is thinly defended. The distances are massive, the weather is brutal, and patrols are difficult and expensive. In many areas, there is little margin for error. In the Arctic, air power matters more than naval power. Ships move slowly. Ice limits access. But aircraft decide who sees first, who responds first, and who controls escalation. Whoever controls the Arctic skies controls surveillance, logistics, and reaction speed. That's why this matters. Canada isn't just a participant in the Arctic future, it's the front line. And right now, that front line is more exposed than most people realize. Which brings us to a critical question. What kind of aircraft actually survives and dominates in that environment? To understand Sweden's move, you have to understand how different these jets were designed to be. The F-35 was built for power projection. It's meant to operate from large, well-protected bases, supported by massive logistics chains, constant software updates, and controlled infrastructure. It's sophisticated, but also delicate. The Gripen E was built for survival. Sweden designed it around a simple question. What happens if your airbases are attacked first? The answer was a jet that can operate from short, damaged runways, even straight highways. A jet that can be refueled and rearmed in minutes by small ground crews. A jet that keeps flying in extreme cold, poor visibility, and electronic interference. In Arctic conditions, those differences matter. The Gripen has a smaller maintenance footprint, faster turnaround times, and extreme cold weather reliability. It's designed to keep working when supply lines are stretched thin and weather turns hostile. Its electronic warfare systems are also built for rough environments, where jamming, terrain, and unpredictable conditions are the norm. This isn't about which jet is better in a brochure comparison. It's about which design philosophy fits reality. The F-35 represents fragile sophistication. The Gripen represents resilient flexibility. And in the Arctic, flexibility often wins. But performance alone isn't the real issue here. The deeper problem is who controls the jet once it's in the air. That's where the story takes a much more uncomfortable turn. On paper, Canada and the United States are equal partners in defending North American airspace. That system is called NORAD. But behind the official language, there is a reality most Canadians rarely hear about. Modern fighter jets are no longer just machines. They are flying computers. Every mission depends on software, encrypted data, sensor fusion, and constant updates. Whoever controls those digital systems controls the aircraft. With the F-35, that control sits largely in the United States. Mission data files are created and updated in U.S.-controlled facilities. Software updates require U.S. approval. Encryption systems are locked. Even how sensors talk to each other is tightly managed. Canada could fly the jet, but it could not fully control it on its own. That means Canada cannot independently modify its aircraft, fully control mission data, or operate outside U.S. digital architecture without permission. In a crisis, that dependence matters. Sweden's offer broke that model completely. Full access to software, full control of mission data, independent encryption, Canadian command over Canadian airspace. This reframes what sovereignty really means. It's no longer just about borders or bases. It's about who owns the code. Canada may defend its skies, but under the current system, it doesn't fully own them. And that realization is exactly why Sweden's offer hit a nerve. Because once you see that dependence clearly, one question becomes impossible to ignore. Is Canada truly a partner in North American defense, or a managed asset? The answer explains what happened next. The reaction in Washington was not slow, and it was not subtle. The moment Sweden's offer became public, alarms went off inside the Pentagon. Lockheed Martin's lobbyists moved quickly. Quiet warnings were sent through diplomatic channels. The message was clear, even if it wasn't spoken openly. This deal could not be allowed to set a precedent, because the real threat wasn't Canada choosing a different jet. The threat was what that choice would prove. If Canada, America's closest air defense partner, could operate a modern fighter fleet with full digital sovereignty, other countries would start asking uncomfortable questions. Why accept software locks? Why give up mission data? Why rely on another nation's permission to defend your own airspace? The Gripen E is cheaper, easier to maintain, and faster to deploy. But more importantly, it can be modified without U.S. approval. That alone makes it dangerous to the existing order. Hundreds of billions of dollars in future weapons contracts depend on the F-35 model staying intact. One high-profile breakaway could trigger others, Norway, Germany, or smaller NATO states watching closely. This wasn't about losing one sale, it was about losing control. And Sweden knew exactly what kind of pressure Canada would face. They made the offer anyway. Because the goal was never to win quietly. It was to force a choice that the Western defense system has avoided for decades. And that leads to the final question. What was Sweden really trying to build? Sweden wasn't trying to sell Canada fighter jets. It was trying to change how Western air power works. Instead of customers and suppliers, Sweden envisioned co-creators. In this model, Canada wouldn't just buy aircraft, it would help shape them. Shared research and development, joint electronic warfare programs, cooperative drone systems, Arctic surveillance and intelligence designed by countries that actually live there. Domestic production was a key part of this vision. Building Gripen components, avionics, software, and maintenance hubs inside Canada would revive capabilities lost since the Avro-Aero era. Not just jobs, but knowledge, independence, and long-term control. This points to a future where Western defense isn't centralized under one country's software and approval systems. A future where allied nations share responsibility without surrendering sovereignty. A multipolar defense ecosystem. One where no single nation decides who can upgrade, deploy, or defend. That's what the Gripen represents. Not just a jet, but a statement. You don't need permission to protect your own skies. And that leaves us with a question worth asking. Should Western security be controlled from one center or shared among equals? That choice hasn't disappeared. It's only been delayed. And now it's up to countries like Canada and viewers like you to decide which future makes more sense.